Hello everyone and very welcome back to my channel English Story with Ella. Today we want to learn English through the story The Little Women. Chapter 1. A Letter from Father. It's Christmas and we aren't going to have any presents, Joe said. It was 2 days before Christmas. Meg, Joe, Beth and Amy March were sisters. Meg was 16 and she was very beautiful. She had big eyes and beautiful long brown hair. Joe was 15. She was tall and thin. She had dark eyes and long brown hair. Beth was 13. She was very quiet. Little Amy had blue eyes and yellow hair. It was 6 in the evening and the girls were at home. They talked about Christmas. Joe wasn't happy. It's Christmas and we aren't going to have any presents, she said. Meg looked at her old dress. I know, Joe, she said, but we don't have much money. Amy said, my friends are going to have presents. I want some presents too. Beth smiled. We don't have any money, she said. But we have mother and father, and we're happy. Joe didn't smile. She said, we don't have father. He's away in the war and he isn't coming back for Christmas. Maybe he isn't going to come back, the girls thought, but they didn't say it. We have a little money, Meg said. What can we buy? I want a new book, Joe said. She loved reading. And I'd like some pens, Amy said. I don't want any presents, Beth said. Let's buy presents for Mother. We can put them on the table for her on Christmas Day. Yes, said Joe. Let's do that. We can buy them tomorrow. What can we get for her? Then Mrs. March arrived in her dark coat and old hat. She called, Children, I'm home. Hello, Mother, the girls answered. Come and kiss me, girls, Mrs. March said. They went to her, and she smiled at them. I have a letter from Father, she said. Let's eat and then we can read it. Later in the evening, Mrs. March said, Sit down now, girls. I'm going to read Father's letter to you. It was a happy letter. Father didn't talk about the war. The letter finished, Give my love and a kiss to my little women. A year is a long time, but I think of them every day. The girls were very unhappy. They wanted their father. They thought about his letter. I'm going to be good this year, Amy said. I don't like my work, Meg said, but I'm going to do it well. I want to be a little woman for Father, Joe said. I'm often angry, but I'm going to stop now. Beth didn't talk. She looked at the floor. Don't be unhappy, girls, Mrs. March said. Let's play a game. After the game, Beth played the old piano. Then Mrs. March said, Good night, girls. Sleep well. She kissed her daughters, and the 4 girls went up to bed. Chapter 2. Christmas Day. Mrs. March said, It's Christmas, girls. Can we give them our food? On Christmas morning, Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy opened their eyes and looked under their beds. There were 4 books there. Meg's book was green, Joe's was red, Beth was white, and Amy's was blue. Oh, Mother, they thought. You are good to us. Meg opened her book and started to read it. Her sisters listened. Later, they went down to the kitchen. Hannah was there. She lived in the house and she helped Mrs. March. There was food on the table. Where's Mother? Meg asked. I don't know, Hannah answered. She went out very early. Amy looked out the window. She's coming down the street, she said. Quickly, Joe said. Put her presents away. Mrs. March came into the house. Good morning, Mother, the girls called. Where were you? Joe asked. Mrs. March answered, I went to Mrs. Hummel's house. She has 7 small children. They don't have any food, and they're very cold. She looked at her daughters. Then she said, It's Christmas, girls. Can we give them our food? The girls looked at the food. They wanted to eat, but they said quickly, Oh, yes, Mother. Can we take it? They went to the Hummels with a big bag of food. Later in the morning, the girls said, Here are your presents, Mother. Oh, thank you. You're good children, Mrs. March said. She looked at her presents and smiled. In the evening, the girls' friends came, and the girls acted for them. They loved acting, and their friends had a good time. Then Hannah said, Come and eat, children. On the table, there was a lot of food and some fruit and candy. The girls looked at it with open eyes. Where did it come from? It's from Santa Claus, Beth said. No, Mother did it, Meg said. Joe said, It's from Aunt March. Maybe she likes us on Christmas Day. She doesn't usually like us. You're wrong, Mrs. March said. It's from old Mr. Lawrence. You see him sometimes. He lives near here. Yes, but we don't know him, Meg said. He was a friend of my father, Mrs. March said. He knows about the food for the Hummels. This food is for you from him, because you didn't eat well this morning. Joe's friend said, My mother knows old Mr. Lawrence. He's a good man, but he doesn't see many people. His daughter is dead and her son lives with him. The boy's name's Laurie. I want to meet Laurie, Joe said. We don't know many boys. Maybe he can act. He can visit us, Mrs. March said. Joe smiled. Oh, Beth said to her mother, We are very happy, but Father isn't happy. No, Mrs. March said quietly. She kissed her daughter. I want to see him, Beth said. I want to give him a present. I know, Beth. I know. Chapter 3. The Party. Oh, said Joe. A New Year's party. Yes, Meg said. But we don't have the right dresses. 5 days later, Meg came quickly into the house. Joe! Joe! She called. Where are you? Here, Joe called. I'm reading. Meg had a letter in her hand. Listen, this letter's from Mrs. Gardner. It's for you and me, and it says, Please come to a small party tomorrow evening. I talked to Mother, and we can go. Oh, said Joe, a New Year's party. Yes, Meg said, but we don't have the right dresses. Joe said, and I have a burn on my good dress. You can sit on a chair all evening, Meg said. Then people can't see the burn. Don't dance. Before the party, Beth and Amy helped Meg and Joe with their dresses and their hair. I can curl your hair with some hot curlers, Meg, Joe said to her sister. Suddenly Beth said, Oh, look! Meg's hair! It's burning! Oh! Meg said, My hair! My hair! I can't go to the party now! But Amy said, Put a ribbon in your hair. There! You can't see the burn now. Beth kissed Meg and said, You're beautiful. Do you have your gloves, girls? Mrs. March asked. Good. Have a good time and come home at 11. At the party, the music played and Meg danced. A tall boy with red hair walked across the room to Joe. Can you dance?
A tall
asked
boy
her.
with red hair walked
Joe
across
wanted
the
to
room
dance,
to Joe.
but she thought about the burn on her dress. She smiled and said, No. Then she went quickly into a small, quiet room. But the Lawrence boy was there. Oh, I am sorry, Joe said. I didn't see you. She looked at him. You live in a big house near our house. My name is Josephine March, but people call me Joe. The boy smiled. Hello, I'm Laurie, he said. Laurie Lawrence? Joe asked. My name's Theodore, he said. But I don't like it because boys called me Dora. Now I'm Laurie. We loved your Christmas presents, Joe said. Do you like parties? Sometimes. I was in France for years and I don't know people here. France, Joe said. Can you talk French? Joe and Laurie talked and talked. Laurie liked music. Listen to the piano, Joe said. Let's go and dance. Yes, let's do that, Laurie said. Oh, Joe said suddenly. I can't. Why? Laurie asked. I have a burn in the back of my dress. I can dance. Laurie smiled. People aren't going to look, he said. Please come. The party finished and Joe and Meg went home. They went up to their bedroom. Amy and Beth were in bed, but they quickly opened their eyes. Amy said, Did you have a good time? Oh, yes, Meg said. And you, Joe? Beth asked. Yes, I had a good time too, Joe said. Here's some candy from the party. They talked for a long time about the party and about Laurie. Chapter 4. The Lawrences. I had a little girl with your eyes, he said to her one day. She played the piano too. She was Laurie's mother. One cold morning, Meg and Joe didn't want to get up. I don't want to work today, Meg said. I want to stay at home too, Joe said. But we can't do that. Meg was a teacher for 4 children in the King family. The job was difficult because the children only wanted to play. Joe worked at Aunt March's house. Aunt March was father's sister, but she had a lot of money. Joe liked her house because she had a lot of books. But Aunt March was an angry woman, and Joe didn't always like her. Amy went to school every day. Beth was a quiet girl, and she didn't want to go to school. She helped Hannah in the house, and she had a teacher at home. In the afternoon, Joe came home from Aunt March's house. She looked up at the Lawrence's big house. Laurie was at a window. Joe called, "Hello! How are you? Are you sick?" Laurie answered, "No, I was sick, but now I'm well again. Come and talk to me." Joe went into Laurie's house and they talked. Joe thought, Laurie doesn't see many people, only old Mr. Lawrence and his teacher, Mr. Brooke. "What are you thinking, Miss Joe?" Laurie said. She answered, "Come and visit us. You can meet Mother and my sisters. Beth can play the piano and Amy can dance for you. Meg and I can talk to you." Laurie smiled. "I'd like that," he said. There was a noise at the door. Then Laurie said, "Excuse me, the doctor's here. Can you wait?" "Yes, of course," Joe said. In the room there was a picture of Mr. Lawrence. Joe looked at it and said, "His face isn't very friendly, but I like him." "Thank you," said the man behind her. It was old Mr. Lawrence. Joe's face was very red, but the old man smiled. "How do you do?" he said. "Come and sit with me." Laurie came back, and Joe talked about her family with him and Mr. Lawrence. After this visit, the March girls often played at Laurie's house, and he came to their home. Beth often played the piano there. It was a good piano, and Mr. Lawrence liked listening to her music. "I had a little girl with your eyes," he said to her one day. She played the piano too. She was Laurie's mother. Then one day, there was a piano in the March family's front yard. The letter on it said, "To Miss Elizabeth March." "For me?" Beth said. "Yes, it's a present for you from Mr. Lawrence," Joe said. Quiet little Beth went quickly to the big house. "Thank you, thank you," she said to the old man. Then she kissed him. After that, the Marches and the Lawrences were very good friends. Chapter 5. Problems for Amy. Amy closed her eyes, and Mr. Davis hid her hand. "Now stand here at my table," he said. "Don't move." "I want some money," Amy said one day. "It's important." "Why, Amy?" Meg asked. "Every day my friends take candy to school. I eat their candy, but I can't buy it for them." "Here's a little money for you," Meg said. "But please don't ask again. We don't have a lot of money, you know." Oh, thank you, Meg, Amy said. In the morning at school, Amy had the candy in her bag. Now every girl wanted to be Amy's friend. Katie Brown said, "Please come to my party." Then Jenny Snow said, "Can I have some candy? I can help you with your schoolwork." "No, you can't have any candy," Amy said. "Yesterday you said Amy March is fat." She walked away. Jenny Snow was angry, and she went to the teacher. "Mr. Davis," she said, "Amy March has some candy in her school bag." Mr. Davis was angry too. He didn't like candy at school. "Amy March," he said, "come here. Bring me your candy." Amy walked to Mr. Davis's table at the front of the room. He said, "Never bring candy to school again. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Mr. Davis," Amy said. Then he said, "Your hand, Miss March." Amy closed her eyes, and Mr. Davis hid her hand. "Now stand here at my table," he said. "Don't move." Amy's face was red and she was very unhappy. Later the teacher said, "You can sit down now, Miss March." But Amy didn't sit down. She didn't talk to Mr. Davis or the girls. She was angry and unhappy. She went home. "Amy, what's wrong?" Mrs. March asked. "Why are you home from school early?" Amy said, "Mr. Davis hit me because I had candy at school." Mrs. March was angry now. "Mr. Davis hit you?" she said. "That's not right. And I'm going to write a letter to the school. You can stay at home. Beth teacher can teach you too." "Good," Amy said. "But Amy," Mrs. March said, "you were bad. Mr. Davis doesn't like candy at the school, and you know that." Amy thought about that. Then she said, "Yes, I wasn't very good. I wanted to be important, and that was wrong. I'm sorry." Amy's mother and her sisters looked at her and smiled.